Everyone, I'm Mike Sinisi, the executive editor for Make Magazine. Today I'm moderating an exciting panel about the unconventional maker economy. Maker community is full of wonderful groups and individuals who love to make and share a wide array of projects. Some of these are for personal enjoyment, but sometimes they become professional endeavors as well. And so today we're going to talk to four awesome makers, Karina Popovich, Ian Charnas, Cannon Reeves, and Melody Usher, who have embarked on journeys ranging from robotics to emergency medical supplies to 3D printing habitats on Earth and in space. So let's spend the next 40 minutes getting to know them, getting to learn about their journeys, and find out how you can get inspired by the cool things that they've been working on as well. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being part of the panel. And I know I had asked you guys a few questions in email from last night, but I wanted to just start off by getting each of you to give a quick run through of what your maker journeys have been like, what sort of original dreams you may have started off with, and how that led to where you're at right now. So I'm just going to go through, and I'm going to go in order from on my screen here. So Ian, I'll go with you first. Give us a quick rundown of what you're working on, who you are, what kind of making you do, and what are you working on right now?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Ian Charnas. I help run the world's largest open access innovation center in makerspace. It's called Sears ThinkBox, and it's located here at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. It's a $50 million building, and it's free and open to the public. We've got wood shop, metal shop, water jet cutter, laser cutter, electronics, textiles, welding, you name it. And it's all free and open to the public. So anytime you're in Cleveland, stop on by, get a tour, and invent something. I've got that as my day job, and then I have sort of a double life I lead, where I make kind of zany inventions on a YouTube channel, and then I raffle those off, and the raffle proceeds, or all of the raffle monies, because I fund the costs, go towards charities that I care deeply about. So I invented a nuclear-powered Game Boy and raffled that off, and the proceeds, or all the raffle money, went to help people who are still living in the area affected by the Chernobyl disaster. Or I made a set of funny emojis and released them one at a time as the fundraising total grew, and we raised $10,000 to help stop suicide. So it's something that combines my love for making things with my passion for trying to make a difference in the time we have here on the planet. I just got back from Canada. I was working on pneumatic jumping shoes that a physical fitness YouTuber named Tyler Satari wanted to build. And my next couple projects, I've got one to make a real life fruit ninja that involves a six-off robotic arm and some computer vision so that it can actually use a sword to slice fruit as it flies through the air. That'll be a fundraiser for a local food bank or maybe one of the national groups working against hunger. And then there's a couple other there, but I'll just put a pin in it so I can let some others talk.
All right, thanks, Ian. Karina, how about you? What are you working on right now, and how did you get there?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm currently in my third year at Cornell, where I'm studying business, surprisingly. But I went to a technical high school in Brooklyn, New York. So I have been doing engineering since I was a little kid, and ended up doing AI research, ended up working at NYU's Makerspace all while I was in high school. And realized that what I really love doing is entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship at that. So during the pandemic, I 3D printed a bunch of PPE, personal protective equipment, and donated it across New York City, across the US, and even some internationally. But basically got a group of 350 people together. We were able to donate and distribute 82,000 face shields and other sorts of PPE. So that was super fantastic. And now a lot of what I work on is creating really fun STEM pop-ups. One thing that I realized being in the kind of STEM education space is that there's really not enough being done to shift perceptions around what a career in STEM looks like, or even the diversity and plethora of careers that exist. And I really want to show that anybody's interests, whether they be at the intersection of fashion engineering or tech and policy, there's a space for them. And we do that through super fun exhibits and pop-ups. And we're working on one that's going to be a fully periwinkle 3D printer pop-up in Chelsea Market in New York City. So that'll be coming up in March for International Women's Day. And that's a little bit about what I'm up to.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. Melody, let's jump down to you and hear about your endeavors.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Melody. I'm the Director of Building Design and Performance at Icon, which is a startup based in Austin, Texas, that focuses on large-scale 3D printing for market rate housing as well as social housing. My journey into looking at 3D printing homes and houses started roughly 8 years ago when I was part of a small group of most of us had just finished graduate school. And we came together as an informal group and submitted working nights and weekends to NASA's 3D printed habitat competition. And surprisingly to us, very fortunately for us, we won first place in that competition, not once, but actually multiple times over the course of 4 years. And something really unexpected happened. We ended up getting phone calls and ended up consulting for major aerospace companies about space architecture and space habitat design. We started working with others who were developing systems for 3D printing in space and incorporated as a startup. And it sort of brought me to where I am at Icon today. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
So exciting. I love that. It's such a great story. Cannon, what about you?
Yeah. So I started in robotics, through first robotics in high school, and instantly kind of fell in love with it. And I went into college thinking like, I just wanted to be the best roboticist as possible. This is like what I love doing. And in college, I got introduced to entrepreneurship and realized that I didn't just care about making robots. I cared about making robots that solve real problems for people. So my sort of like sophomore year of college, I started an educational robotics company and ended up dropping out of college and running with that company for a few years. And that got acquired last year. And so now I'm working on another robotics company doing underground last mile delivery.
Awesome. Yeah. And congratulations on the acquisition as well. So everybody's got a little bit of a different journey and in a different spot within this world of making. But the thing that's interesting is that you've all kind of found your own path to it. One of the things that I am always curious about when I think about what makes success happen, and it is the idea of skill versus luck. And I know some of you have the formal training. Some of you started on the formal path and then changed directions to something else, but still maintained that the interest in on the making and building side. So I wanted to talk about that for a couple minutes. What the idea of how to get yourself into a spot where you're working on something that's really interesting, but with enough success to sustain it, keep it going, and get others interested in it and grow it into something. What are you guys' thoughts on that? I will start.
In terms of how to, I'm unmuted. In terms of how to get yourself into a position that you're actively involved in the kinds of projects that our panelists are involved in. Yeah, exactly. Or something. The things that like what you guys are working on, but also if somebody has their own idea of something that's just they're really passionate about, like how to maximize that. How do you maximize either the skill side, the luck side, or the combination of both to allow themselves to really express themselves in that area of interest for themselves? Sure, I'll share one thought and then see the time. But helping to run a makerspace, I see every day here there are students, staff, faculty members, members of the community who come in, not just for access to the equipment, but also for the community that is just part of and infused to makerspaces all around the world. You have the individuals with talent, with drive, with motivation and desire to bring something new into the world, whether it be a for-profit or a for-benefit kind of project. And they're here in the same space, in this milieu of other smart, zany, interesting people who are drawn perhaps by the equipment, but then found themselves in a community where they're getting bits of advice they never knew to ask for, where they're networking with people that are able to help them on the parts of the project that they know they can't do themselves. So I think community is a big factor there.
And that it's one of the things that it also seems to be an interesting challenge with the current world that we live in for the last couple of years, with not being able to necessarily gather. And this is one of the things that I see a lot of discussion about. How much of the the sort of the surprise ideas that come up when groups of people get together versus having to shelter in place or be at home to try to maintain safety from COVID. So is that something Ian or maybe any of the others that you guys have found as a struggle, or are there ways around that you've that you've seen over the last couple of years?
I can jump in. I think the thing that has really propelled and accelerated the work that I've been involved in when it comes to 3D printed habitats has been putting our work out there for online communities and for general, all kinds of communities, frankly, to actually see it and get excited about it and feel like they can understand what it is that we're working towards. So communicating like that vision and really believing in that vision and not feeling like it's too big of a problem or too challenging of a problem has been a big part of what I've been involved in the teams that I've worked with. And I think that that in addition to both skill and luck has been something that has really moved things forward for us and accelerated the progress that we've made to realize bigger and bigger prototypes and develop technologies that are more advanced, develop architectural concepts that are more believable, more feasible. And I think that putting ourselves out there like that and sort of representing the vision of what it is that we want to see in the world has been one of the most important things. And yeah, of course, with COVID, like we can't meet in person, but certainly there's always opportunities to share work and have people feel like they're involved and find synergies with other groups online and in other ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to tack onto what Melody was saying about online communities, there are a lot of discords that sprung up over the past 2 years relative to making. So when I go to one of my recent projects was putting myself inside a video game. It was Punch Out for the Nintendo, if anyone's played that. But I was able to jump onto a Discord that included many of the very knowledgeable developers of the emulator systems that are out there. And I was able to share, hey, here's the project I'm working on. Here's the plan I'm trying to take. And they gave me bits of advice that dramatically altered the course of the project and helped me get it to actually work and to work faster. If you look at some of the YouTube engineers, scientists, makers, Stuff Made Here is one of my favorites. He has a Discord that I believe is open to everybody. You can go in there, and a lot of engineers, makers, scientists are drawn to those kinds of areas. And it's a place where you can freely share your project, get bits of advice online, no matter where you may be located in the world, and also no matter what the COVID conditions may be.
Yeah. Ian, I might need to pick your brain later for for some of those Discord communities. I was, after watching your Punch Out video, I started trying to figure out how to access some of the body tracking tools that you used in that, because I had some of my own ideas, and I hit a couple dead ends in that. So I'm gonna ask you about that later. But Karina, with you working on the PPE stuff, I know that there was an incredible global response that came up as we discovered that we were globally in a place where there was insufficient medical supplies and emergency supplies. What was working with on your project and with some of the other communities in that same space like for you?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, I think, all of my work with makers for COVID-19, the organization that I built as a result to donate PPE, really benefited from the whole online world and communities in a sense, because really the way that we got people together was by posting in Reddit groups. I was hanging around in Reddit groups, figuring out what, people were going through. I mean, we weren't the first to print PPE. I wasn't the first to print PPE. There were other people doing it before me. I just happened to be kind of part of the early adopters group. And, I figured out, what people really need was more of a community that could cater to 3D printing PPE and kind of have more of that organization and distribution part. And that's exactly what I was able to build out once I figured that out. And I think one of the cooler things that I realized is that, when I built Makers for COVID-19, I was 19 years old. And being in an online community, no one really kind of asked what my age was. And no one was really even able to notice, which made, making that possible, even a reality. And so I think that being in online communities has definitely helped me and really kind of made it possible to do things that I never thought were possible for someone so young.
That's really interesting. Yeah, the idea that it's more of a level playing field when you're dispersed in that sense. Cannon, for this stuff that you've been working on with the robotics platforms, you mentioned that you've been working on robotics since you were 14, and then you built your own robotics platform company, and the one that that was recently acquired. But what was that journey like, putting together a company? Especially with knowing the robotics side from the stuff that you'd worked on through your youth, but then getting into the entrepreneurial side and trying to marry those two. Was this something that you did entirely on your own? Were there others involved? What was that process like?
Yeah, it was interesting sort of becoming my own customer. I had been recently through that journey of like, how do you go from knowing nothing about robotic learning and wanted to create better tools for that, and specifically created it so that I could teach my little sister. And so I was very invested in the problem, and that made it really easy to talk to other people who were also really invested in the problem. So a lot of that journey was talking to teachers who just cared so deeply about teaching students and working with students and letting students build our early prototypes and seeing all the things that went wrong with it. But it was a long and really tough journey. We were some young 20-year-olds that had no idea what we were doing, trying to start a company, and there's a few of us. And I found that like the thing that like created the most luck was always talking to people, whether that was in person before COVID or through Twitter, honestly, after. Twitter's a huge like networking tool in the education space as well as in the startup space. So yeah, it did not come from it came from talking to a lot of people and getting out there and getting people to get their hands on our product and give feedback.
Can you describe the product a little bit? I think I see one up behind you on the shelf there. Well, tell us a little bit more about the robots that you had been putting together.
Yeah, so this is kind of there's a lot going on, but basically it's kind of like a 3D printed Lego. So all these components are 3D printed, and so you could take 4 wooden dowels and these 2 3D printed parts and create this little truss. And with this little truss, it's kind of like our Lego brick. You could build almost anything. So we built everything from simple robots that drove around to humanoid-sized robots to drones. So it was really made to be an open-ended platform that kids could then design and create their own components for and expand.
And how did you figure out how to then take the designs, the prototypes, and actually do manufacturing and selling? There's a lot to that. That's becoming a manufacturer is a big thing. So how far into that did you go?
Yeah, so we ended up creating our own 3D print farm and operating it all ourselves. Has a lot of drawbacks. I'd caution anybody who wants to do that. There's it's a lot of work. But just started by like a week after we came up with it. We didn't mean to start the company. I just made this prototype for my sister, and then we were like, oh, maybe we should start a company. We were doing summer camps, and so we just had like we had an event that forced us to have something. And so that when you tie yourself to something like that, you figure out how to make it work. And so for us, it was like, okay, well, let's 3D print everything. And it just kind of snowballs.
That's very cool. Now, everybody here has some involvement in some of these new, what we call like maker tools, 3D printing, large scale 3D printing farms. Ian, you're helping run a makerspace, which I'm sure has pretty much every tool at their disposal. But how much do you guys see sort of the access to these new types of tools and the ability to use and prototype things that maybe had been much harder to do a generation ago? How much has that allowed you guys to do what to make things happen that you're working on now, or you see other people that are also similarly growing and building things that are just eye-opening?
Yeah, I could take a shot at that. So that reminds me of the question about this term making or maker. Why do we use this term making or maker when people have been inventing and tinkering in their garages and their stone huts for thousands of years? So what's the difference between my dad's generation, who attached lawnmower engines to their bicycles so they could terrify their neighbors, and say my generation, where I attach a jet engine to my back to terrify my dad and my health insurance plan? And I think the reason we now use this term maker is because of the internet. I think with what the internet brings us, and some of us might now have spent most of our lives with the internet just being a thing, is suddenly we're able to learn and to share what we've done. We're able to learn from others and share what we've done at a global scale. So it's not just my dad's generation, whatever happened to be the state of the art of tools and knowledge in his and his friends' garages. Now, a makerspace is like a global garage. The internet is like a global library. And the rapidity at which we are exchanging ideas and helping each other grow and nurture these projects is just unparalleled throughout history. And it earned the term. It earned a new term, maker or making.
Yeah. I think part of it for me when I look at the maker movement, the maker community, is also that for a period of time, you're totally right. The humanity is essentially throughout its entire history is based on figuring out how to make things and find ways to survive and then everything else from there. But over the last number of decades, I feel like a lot of that started getting taken away from us. And so for me, to see that, suddenly we have a group of people who are sharing ways to get inside your cars again, or to get excited about prototyping and creating brand new ideas, things that that only the top level engineer level people for in the 60s and 70s had access to. I find that to be just so exciting and super fun. But yeah, absolutely, like this is something that there was this group in our parents' generation and going on before that for quite some time. So one of the questions that I was also very curious about is if you guys felt that there was a turning point in any of your journeys, something that you, as you started getting into, into the higher education and getting into professional level worlds, where something happened and you said, "Oh, this is something different I want to do." And Cannon, you had an example of that with discovering the entrepreneurship when you got into college, and that changing your robotics education, robotics engineering course. But I always find that to be really interesting. Like that, it's sort of a surprise thing that comes up, and you go, this is something different that I'm gonna do now. Did you guys have examples of some of those things that may have happened for you? One of them, actually, I'm going to point at Karina real quick, because I am curious, going to a technical high school and then going into, it sounds like you're doing a business program now.
Yeah.
What that is, it's kind of maybe a little similar to Cannon, but what led you to go onto the business side of things?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think my story is very similar to Cannon's. in that I, realized that I absolutely love robotics, and like Hannon, was on the robotics team also in high school, and kind of realized that I want to do more than just engineer. I want to kind of I want to scale my solutions to actually kind of make a bigger impact, and I want to be through that whole journey of being there for the problem, solving it, and then scaling it for everyone to use. And I think that's where I kind of decided, I have enough technical background to the point where I could learn, most concepts or most new things that I needed to. And now it's about kind of learning the business side of things so that I can, build more and do more cool things. And I think that's one kind of big pivotal moment that I had, is applying to college and realizing that I should explore more of the business side of things. And now I'm going through another pivotal moment where I'm realizing that a lot of the interests that I do have are kind of at the center of design and art. So I'm very into fashion, and I'm looking a lot into NFTs and digital fashion houses, and kind of the virtual reality side of fashion. And kind of, going along the lines of Meta and all the kind of most recent exciting innovations that are happening. So I think those are kind of two big critical points that have been pushing me, or kind of, I guess, the catalysts for me going into business and now going into the more kind of design side of tech.
Awesome.
I could share one more, Mike, if there's time.
Yeah, there's time.
I've had a number of sort of turning points or really big learning experiences. And the one I'd want to share is the learning experience where I suddenly was able to accept advice and to accept perhaps critique without getting very, very defensive. So I learned computer programming very young. I started writing programs when I was 8. And so I was often told, and I think a lot of the panelists and maybe the attendees have had experiences where they were good at something at a very young age. And you get praise, and it's a good thing, but it's a double-edged sword, because it can build up this idea in part of your mind that you know everything. And I definitely had that idea in my mind that I knew everything. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew the right way to do it. I didn't need advice from anybody. And it was, it really limited my success for years, and I never knew it. We didn't have, when I was in high school, we didn't have FIRST robotics. There weren't team competitions where I would have kind of gained the kind of experience that lets you work well in a team, lets you accept critique and not see it as an attack, but see it as advice and see it as something that is good for you. And so I'm really excited to see all the really amazing competitions and the way in which people nowadays are competing. I think Gen Z does a better job than my generation did, Gen X, about competing in these competitions in a sort of colloquial, professional, considerate way, where if you're sharing advice with another team, it's to your honor and not to your discredit. And if you're accepting advice and accepting critique, it's to your honor and not to your discredit. And so I'm excited to see the world, I hope, heading that direction.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Great advice. And I will accept that advice. That's Melody. I'm curious about you. If there's been anything along any moments along your journey where you've suddenly had a realization, or something just made you change directions, or just put you on a new path. Anything that you could share?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that this led me to change directions, but I think a moment of realization that I had, and that others I've been working with had, a few years into doing what we've been doing, is that maybe this is like the flip side of what Ian was speaking about, but we sort of approached our work when it comes about 3D printing in space and constructing habitats in space from the perspective that there's an outside subject matter expert at NASA who has all the answers, and we're trying to just understand what they already know. And that was sort of the idea that we had going into it, is this notion that there are people far older than us who've worked this problem out, and we're just trying to pick up the pieces and make it make sense for us. But the more embedded that we became in the NASA research groups that actually do this work, and the more collaborative that we were with others in industry who've also been thinking about this problem, the more clear it became that no one has a good answer. There's no single source of truth, and there is no single subject matter expert who knows exactly what to do and how to get it done. And so suddenly, like, the barrier for entry for this problem and contributing to it became like almost non-existent. And it was clear that everyone, as long as they have some sort of, I guess you could say, technical understanding of the challenges implicit in these problems, can make a contribution. And that was a big, big realization for me, where suddenly, like, it was the folks at NASA who were asking us what the answers were. And I was like, wow, that was not the way I expected things to work out. So people have been referring to me as a subject matter expert in more recently, and I'm starting to own it. And that's been an interesting part of my journey.
That's great. Yeah, I like that a lot. It reminds me when I was younger of a moment, and some of my friends, we've talked about this in the past, about kind of hitting that point where you realize nobody else knows what they're doing. They're all just making it up as they go along. So why can't I be a part of that too? You know, I can participate in these things. And that, for me, that was a realization that led me into some incredible and very exciting journey. So I think that's a good one to project and to present to everybody.
And also, I'll just add really quickly that there's this, it's really not about who you are. I think what matters most is the work that you do and how you contribute in the work that you do. So it's like, we have this idea of what a stereotypical engineer might be. And suddenly I realized that, like, the projects that we had created speak for themselves, and it really doesn't matter who's behind it. And anyone can sort of, there's no one idea for what the correct answer is or what a true engineer is and how we can move towards realizing these big, crazy, wicked concepts.
Yeah, that's great. That's a very good point. Kenan, anything else that you wanted to add on that side of things, on this topic?
Yeah, I would say two things. One, the best things and the best moments in my life, if I like track backwards, were unexpected and also really related to my passions. And I found that if I, like, my guiding principle for my life is like, just follow the passion. And I've realized that there's jobs I've worked that I just didn't have the passion. I would just, like, you know, have to force myself to wake up in the morning and just like slug to work. I hated it, right? But when I worked on the problems that I was really passionate about, it was just the total opposite. I couldn't fall asleep at night because I just couldn't stop thinking about the problems. I couldn't stop working on these things. And so just recognizing that sometimes my life is going to take a different turn because opportunities will present themselves. But as long as the passion is on the other side of that opportunity, it's okay to follow it and it'll work out. The other thing is, almost every one of those inflection points, as I was, like, you know, going through school and learning and getting introduced to these things, were associated with a mentor who chose to invest in me, even though I had, you know, accomplished nothing or done nothing in the past, but they chose to believe in me. And that sort of vote of confidence from somebody I respected truly opened doors for me. It's like within my own mindset about how I thought about what I could do. And also to piggyback off of what Ian said too, like, when I realized to not fall in love with my designs, that, like, it wasn't about the thing I created, it was about the problem I was solving, to fall in love with the problem. And not just the big problem, even the really little technical problems. And when you care more about solving the problem than the thing you make, you get to the solution so much faster, you take critique so much faster, and you're just ultimately more pleasant to work with. Very good.
Yeah, thanks. The mentor thing is actually, I think, really interesting and probably overlooked these days. I don't know if, you know, it's something that we all necessarily have access to, but how many of you guys feel like you had a good mentor in your path and your journeys in the past?
I didn't. And I think that was part of the problem, is that I didn't feel like I didn't know who to look to. And I also didn't think that would be something available to me, not only academically, but like outside in the real world too. But over time, I realized that, like, I was gravitating towards friends and colleagues whose work I really admired. And that was the thing that really kept me going, is sort of staying abreast with what they were up to. And and then looking ahead. And so over time, I made a very concerted effort to reach out to folks, even blind sometimes, whose work I admired, and sort of ask them, hey, like, can I talk through this with you? Like, I have a question, like, and basically asking people if they would be willing to be mentors. And more often than not, they are. And that has been super instrumental for me personally.
That's fantastic to hear. Yeah, I that was my follow-up question is how could someone looking for a mentor, maybe not even realizing it, maybe realizing it now because of our panel, that this is something that might be helpful to them, but how might they go about finding a mentor?
I can jump in here. I think mentorship has played a very huge role in my life. At every stage, I've definitely had mentors that have been like huge and just kind of pushing me in the right direction, or like telling me something that I like didn't know, but you know, kind of held in the back of my head, and they kind of made me realize that I should be putting more weight on that and thinking more about that. But I think a really great way of finding mentors is really doing exactly what Melody did, and reaching out to people that you know admire and that you look up to, and asking them questions. And funny that you asked this, because I literally did this, you know, a few minutes ago today. I had a LinkedIn recommendation come up for someone, and I thought, wow, this person is super cool. I'd love to talk to them. And I feel like whenever I get that feeling of like, wow, this person's cool, I want to talk to them, instead of kind of like pushing that aside, I actually reach out to them and say like, hey, I think you're super cool. Let's both be cool together on a Zoom call, and let's just talk about something that, you know, that we're working on. And that's how I end up, you know, meeting new people, making new connections, and kind of learning more about the world and more about the opportunities that exist out there, in addition to finding really great mentors. And I think at the end of the day, like, anyone you meet can give you a good piece of advice, or, you know, influence some sort of mentorship onto you. And I think having that mindset with it is how I've been able to just find mentorship everywhere I go.
Nice. That's very cool.
That's excellent. I want to add on to something Melody said, and maybe see if you agree or disagree. I get asked now for mentorship on people's projects, and the kinds of requests that I like the most are when people have, I guess the phrase to use would be, done their homework. If someone comes to me and they say, oh, I'm making this product, I've done this and this and this and this, and now I'm at this point, I just can't figure out why this isn't working, or I'm not sure which direction to go next. Here's 3 directions I'm thinking about going, or here's all the things I've tried to solve my problem, and I'm stuck. I see that they've put in the legwork, they put in the time and the hard work to try to solve it on their own, and they reached a point where they need some additional help, and those are the best. And in contrast that would be someone who comes in and says, can you think of a new innovation I could make in the field of solar technology? Which is a question I got recently. I thought, no, like that's not really a specific question. That's a very big and general question. And I don't, you know, it didn't seem to me at that point that they had really put in the work to understand how solar panels work, what the competitive landscape was. They didn't do, for the ideas that they did have, they didn't search to see if they already existed. So I bet when Melody contacted folks, she was asking specific questions. It sounds like you have really bootstrapped yourself into all of this knowledge. And it was probably a much more fruitful conversation when you were speaking with potential mentors, because it was a give and take, not just a take. So I'll share that with anybody out there who's thinking of approaching a mentor. Personally, I do like when people have done a little bit of the work themselves, and I can help them get that next mile.
I would love to get your $1 billion business idea, Ian. So please share that with me anytime.
Join my MLM.
So we're about to wrap up time-wise, but I did want to give each of you a chance to share any links or information where people might be able to find the stuff that you're working on, so that if they wanted to see more of the stuff that you do. So let's just go around here. Ian, how can people find you online?
Sure. You can find me online. I'm Ian Charnas on every platform imaginable. YouTube is the biggest one, but you can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Karina, how about you?
Yeah, just like Ian, I'm Karina Popovich everywhere. You can find me on LinkedIn, find me on Instagram. Most of the work that I do now with Inertia, the exhibit pop-up project that I'm working on, our website is inertia.nyc. So those are all of my links.
Okay. Melody?
Same for me. I'm Melody Ashar on all social and most other channels. And I have a website, it's melodyashar.com. And if you're interested in learning more about Icon, our website is iconbuilt.com.
Great. Yeah, definitely check it out. There's some really cool stuff going on in there. And Cannon, how about you?
Yeah, Cannon Reeves on all platforms. Twitter's probably the main one that I use, but also LinkedIn.
Okay. And I'm Mike Sinisi from Make Magazine. This is what we do. We cover to cover projects, inspiration, getting people excited about doing the stuff that we're talking about in this panel here. I just wanted to say thanks to all of the panelists. You guys are awesome. And I encourage all the viewers to go and check out their work. I also wanted to say thank you to the Festival of Urgent Reinventions for hosting this panel, because this is some good topics for us to be able to talk about, and appreciate the platform. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of the show for today and tomorrow, and look forward to hearing from you otherwise. Okay, so have a good one.